Hey guys, so this is going to be a pretty long video. I want you to watch the parts that you really need to. If you need to fast forward or move ahead, that's fine. You don't have to watch the whole thing, but I wanted to make sure you had access to every problem. So we're going to start here with number 1 and get going. All right, so it asks you to solve by the square root method. So you need to remember that if it can be solved by the square root method, then that means that it was a perfect square. So you're looking for things that are perfect squares. The first one, you see it's easily a perfect square. This whole expression is squared, so that makes it all a perfect square. And then 81 is a perfect square. So this one meets the criteria. So you could absolutely square root this. 2x squared plus 10x minus 25. First, you see if there's got a GCF. So if there's a greatest common factor, you can divide out. You would do that and then look for the square root. This does not have a greatest common factor, so it does not meet the qualifications. Again, this one, nothing to factor out, and you can't, nothing that's a perfect square except for the 4 and the x squared, and that doesn't work because it's not all. 3x squared minus 27 equals 0. You can factor out the 3. So 3 is not a perfect square, but x squared is, and now minus 9 is. So this x squared minus 9, you absolutely can perfect square method. So this is the other one that is the answer. All right, quadratic formula. Quadratic formula is the best. It works on all quadratics. It does not work on non-quadratics. So quadratics exist because they have x squared as the highest exponent. So anything that is not x squared does not count. So like here we've got to the 3rd power. That's a cubic, not a quadratic. X squared plus 5x minus 15 equals 0. X squared is the highest exponent and it's a 2, so it counts. 7x plus 12 equals 3x. There's no squared here. This is a linear function. It's not a quadratic, so formula would not work. And here x squared minus 6x equals 0 would also work because it's got a squared. So the quadratic formula would work on those two because they are quadratic expressions or equations. All right, here, multiple choice. You have to figure out what's your best method. I'm going to say go with, it literally tells you to use graphing technology. So we're going to pop up some Desmos over here, get going. So the first thing I want to do, whoops, I don't want it to be that big. I'm sorry, kiddos, let me fix that. All right, come on, little calculator. Get back where you belong. All right, let's try this again. So here, I'm going to type in the formula, 49x squared plus 105x plus 50. All right, so I have my parabola, my solutions. When it tells me to solve, remember I'm solving for the zeros or the roots, the x-intercepts, right? So here and here. So I'm going to look at those two places right there where I see my parabola. So I've got my two answers. I see that they're both negative, which means that anything that's not both negative would be wrong. So I'm looking at my answers. My answers are all in fraction forms or whole numbers. These are decimals. So I can't necessarily go by what I see, but I can notice they're both negative. So I would get rid of A because it's all positive. And I see that these are both decimals, which means they're not whole numbers. So now I can take my calculator and I can say, okay, well, what is negative 7 divided by 10 as a decimal? Well, 0.7, which, you know, looks kind of close to this second one, but I feel this is a terminating decimal and this is an irrational number, so that's not the right answer. So let's do negative 10 divided by 7, and now we get this awesome irrational number, negative 1.4285, and then so that matches that negative 10 over 7. So we would go with C, right? So not an irrational number, but just like a crazy long decimal. That doesn't really make a lot of sense. All right, let's look at the other problem. So we said C for number 3, and let's put in number 4, 5x squared. So remember that Decimus only likes the letter x. So even though it says n, we're going to type x. There's our parabola, and here are our roots. All right, so we're going to go through and see, okay, which one of these is going to match these decimals, right? Because this is root form or radical form, so we need to make it match. So I'm going to go ahead and make a fraction and then type that on top. Let's see. All right, so plus, and then I need square root of 49, and then underneath of that, I need it to be 10. So 1.6, that is a terminating decimal. Neither one of those are terminating, so it's not A. So let's try B. Make my fraction, type in 9 plus square root of 41 over 10. All right, 1.54. 1.54. Let's look at the other option, 9 minus. Oh wait, first I need my fraction. 9 minus the square root of 41. Come on, friend. There we go. Over 10. And then we got 0.259. Oh, that's perfect. That is the answer. So we got B as our answer there. So that's a good way to do it. On this one, if that feels like it's taking too much time, you can always do the quadratic formula on this and get that answer. So here we had the answer B, and on 3 we had answer C. All right, let's scroll it down. All right, 5 and 6, pull out Desmos. Again, all right, so we're looking for the roots. It says to solve it. When we solve it, we're looking at that x-axis. So x squared equals 144. Now, when I do this, I'm not going to get a parabola in Desmos because it's got the equal to. If I move 144 over here and did minus 144, I would end up with a parabola. So I can see it. But if I just do equals, I still get the answers at negative 12 and positive 12. So what happens here is it's giving me solutions to an equation, and that appears as vertical lines through the solutions on the x-axis. So the answer here would be B. All right, and then we've got number 6. Again, this is like Desmos is our bestie for the resty. We want to use this calculator just as much as we can. All right, equals. Now when I put this equals, it's going to change to 2 vertical lines. All right, so I see 2 vertical lines. I see 1. All right, so I got 4 and negative 22 and B. All right, if I wanted to see this as a parabola, I would have to move 169 over, and I would just say minus. And now I see a parabola, and I still get negative 22 and 4. So either way, I'm going to see the answer. My roots crossing at the x-axis because we solved it. All right, then this next bit, we definitely want to use Desmos to check our work. But on the test, these problems where it says show your work are going to count a lot more than the multiple choice ones do that we just did all in the calculator. So you want to use your calculator to check your answers, but you need to solve it the way it says to. So we're going to solve this using square roots. When I solve, I know that I need it to equal 0. So the first thing I'm going to do is get this 28 back over to the other side with the rest of the expression. And then negative 8 minus 28 is minus 36. And now this side equals 0. So now I can do what it tells me to do, which is square root. So now I'm going to take this whole thing and square root it. And when I square root it, I get the square root of 9 is 3. The square root of p squared is p. The square root of 36 is 6. And because there's, it's times itself, so there's 2 factors. And because it's minus, to get a negative, I have to have a positive and a negative sign. So those would be my 2 factors, and they both equal 0. This is the factors. I am not done. Now I have to solve it. So I'm going to say 3p plus 6 equals 0. and 3p minus 6 equals 0. So each of these factors are going to equal 0. So if this is 0, what's p? All right, so I'm going to just solve it like a two-step equation. 3p equals negative 6. Divide by 3. So I get p equals negative 2. Over here, I add 6. 3p equals 6. Divide by 3. And I get p equals positive 2. If I put this in Desmos, I can see if I did that correctly. Let's move this over a bit. So 9x squared minus 36. All right, so I should get 2 and negative 2 here at my roots, and I did, so I did it correctly. So that's how you use Desmos on these problems. Go ahead and type it in. Know what your answer is before you start. That is okay to do, like you're trying to get a good grade. So go ahead and know what your answers are, but then your work has to match. Like, we're going to be checking for that. All right, here, solve by factoring. Factoring is our big X, right? So start with our big X. Remember, it's 1 times whatever. So the coefficient of a squared times constant is on top, and then the coefficient of the middle terms on the bottom. So it multiplies the negative 56 and adds up to negative 1. And the answer there would be negative 8 and 7. So these add up to negative 1. So little hint, the sign of the bottom number is going to be the sign of the bigger factor. So whatever this sign is, it will share it with the biggest factor. All right, so now I've got a minus 8 times a plus 7 equals 0. So this is my factored problem. Now I have to solve it. So I get a minus 8 equals 0. A plus 7 equals 0. So two factors because two places where it's going to cross that x-axis. Add 8. So a equals 8 minus 7. And a equals negative 7. So this is my solution. All right. And then I would check it in Desmos. All right, number 9 doesn't give us a way to do it. I can see if I can factor it with big X. So this would be 2 times negative 13 and give us negative 26. And then 3 at the bottom. And I see fairly quickly that because 13 is a prime number, there's no way that I can get 2 and 13 to add up to some kind of sum of 3. So the only way that this is going to work is if I do the quadratic formula. So I'm going to do the quadratic formula. You will be given a formula sheet for this. So please make sure that you are looking at that sheet, and you don't have to memorize your formulas, but you do need to make sure that you are using them and know how to use them. So this is the opposite of B. Now, let me start this over. So the quadratic formula is the opposite of B plus and minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c divided by 2a. All right, so I know that a equals 2, the number in front of x squared, and b equals the number in the middle with the x, and c equals the constant, which is the number all by itself. And then I just take my numbers and put them where they belong. So the opposite of b is 3, plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a, which is 2, times c, which is negative 13. All right, over 2 times a, which is 2. All right, so I like to write everything out and see it. I'm going to go ahead and say, well, the opposite of 3 is negative 3. I'm going to go ahead and do plus or minus my square root, and then 2 times 2 is 4. Then I'm going to put what's underneath my radical in my calculator. Not the radical, just what's underneath of it. That word, the name for that is called the discriminant because it tells us a lot about our answers. So we're going to take our calculator. You'll have the yellow one. 3 squared minus 4 times 2 times negative 13, and that number is 113. Whoops. highlighter got away from me. All right, I know that 113 can't be simplified, but I am going to go ahead and put this in. So this whole thing basically is the answer. That's -3 plus the square root of 113 divided by 4 and -3 minus the square root of 13 divided by 4. I'm going to put both of those in my calculator. So if we do put this in our calculator here, even in Desmos, we can put in the calculator in Desmos. So first we want to make the fraction. And on top is -3 and then plus the square root of 113 divided by 4. And we get 1.9. And then we're going to do it again, fraction first. -3 minus the square root of 113. And then divided by 4. So these are our two answers in decimal form. So we got this one equals, so we get 1.9 and -3.4. So I could put this problem in Desmos from the beginning and get those decimal numbers as the roots. All right, let's see. It says, use any method to show your work. So again, we're having to show our work here. So the first thing I need to do is move 24 over. I will say that my favorite method is quadratic formula because it always just works. And I don't have to think about what multiplies to this and adds up to that. I can just plug in numbers and get an answer at the end. So that's when I'm going to do that here again. Quadratic formula, so the opposite of -8 plus and minus the square root of -8 squared minus 4 times 1 times 24 divided by 2 times 1. Right? Sorry, guys. All right, so it's going to be 8 plus or minus the square root over 2. And let's put this in the calculator, get our discriminant. Oh, this should be a -24. I was wondering what I did wrong. All right, there we go. -4 times 1 times -24. So our discriminant is 160. So I get 160 in here. And then I can put 160. If you have the little scientific yellow calculator, you can just put that directly in. I can do 8, make a fraction, do 8 plus the square root of 160, and divide it by 2, sorry. And I'm going to get 4 plus the 2 root 10. And then the other root is going to be 4 minus 2 root 10. So that's my favorite way, probably. You'll also get some decimal answers that way. I think, honestly, if you've got the radical answer or the decimal answer here, I'm going to be super excited and give you credit. So just whichever one feels the easiest to you is what you should do as far as your final answer goes, but it does need to be in simplest form. So all right, so here again, so A equals 4, B equals -24, and then C, the constant is missing, so that's just 0. So it's going to be the opposite of -24 plus and minus the square root of -24 squared minus 4 times A times C divided by 2 times 4. So I'm going to get 24 plus and minus the square root, and then over 8. So your discriminant, put that in your calculator, is 576. All right, the square root of 576 is 24. So we essentially have 24 plus 24 divided by 8, And then on the other side, 24 minus 24 divided by 8. That gives us 6 on this side, and the other side is 0. So this is what r is equal to, 6 and 0. And we plug it into the calculator in Desmos, we would see the parabola across there. All right, number 12. All right, so we're going to add 8 to both sides. We get a squared plus 5a plus 6. And I could use the quadratic formula here, but these are really small numbers, and I know that 2 times 3 adds to 5 and multiplies to 6. All right, so if I'm doing big X, I know that it's 3 and 2. So I get a plus 3 times a plus 2, that equals 0. Then I'm solving for the x-axis, so I'm going to make both those factors equal to 0. And then subtract the 2 over here. Those cancel, and 0 minus 2 equals negative 2. So a equals these two things. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. All right, next. Distance formula. All right, so the distance formula is the square root of the difference in your x's squared plus the difference in your y's squared. And you just punch that whole thing in your calculator and it gives you a beautiful answer. So what I am loving about geometry is that everything's so visual. So I can see my point. This is 2 and 3. And I can see this point is 3 and negative 4. Okay. So now I can plug this in. So I'm going to go ahead. I like to make my blueprint. Alright, so I make my blueprint, this whole thing, and then I pull my numbers. So I'm going to pull my numbers. So my x's are 2 and negative 3, and I'm just going to plop them in. And then my y's are 3 and negative 4. I'm going to plop them in. And then I put that whole thing into my calculator. So let's put this into Desmos. All right, so we start with our, and I just type it in, 2 minus negative 3, and then we square it, plus 3 minus negative 4, and then we square it. And that's the answer, 8.6. Okay. So we're done. If you put in your yellow calculator, you'll probably get a root. So I'll do that answer for you as well. Same thing, you just take your yellow calculator and type the whole thing in. 2 minus negative 3 squared plus 3 minus negative 4 squared. And that's going to give you the square root of 74. So, which is 8.6. So those are the equivalents. All right, here we don't have to even worry about looking at a graph. We just see our numbers. So we're going to do that big old formula to make my blueprint. And then pull my numbers. So negative 1 and 7 for my x's, negative 7 and 8 for my y's. Type it in to the calculator. I'm doing this in the yellow calculator. Negative 1 minus 7 squared plus negative 7 minus 8 squared. And we get 17. That's a nice answer. All right, midpoint. Midpoint's so easy. I love midpoint because it's finding the average. What is the average distance, the middle, Average means middle if you weren't aware. So we take our x values. So this is just x plus x divided by 2. And then y plus y divided by 2. And that gives us two new numbers. That is the middle. So I'll get 0. I don't know why I did a parenthesis. So 0 plus negative 7 over 2. Negative 6 plus 4 over 2. So negative 7 divided by 2 is negative 3.5. And then negative 2 divided by 2 is negative 1. So this would be the middle of those points.
Excuse me, let me need to make an announcement about our release today.